Discover 12 amazing aquatic predators of the Cretaceous that changed ocean life forever. The bold headline blazed across Jake's makeshift research station in Sea-Watch like a siren call, yanking the townspeople's nostalgia for simpler times into a whirlpool of anxiety. Jake was only 32, yet his passion for marine biology wove deeply into the fabric of this small coastal town, where every lapping wave echoed memories of the past. Mornings spent fishing with his grandfather carved his values of hard work and respect for the ocean into his soul. Sea-Watch thrived on its annual fish festival, the air thick with laughter and the smell of grilled fish. Everyone brought out their time-worn recipes and shared tales over backyard barbecues. But Jake's latest findings about 12 outstanding predators from the Cretaceous period threatened to shake up the sturdy pillars of tradition that anchored this community. The men and women who had cast their nets into the surf since childhood felt uneasy with change looming over their destinies. As Jake gazed out over the sun-kissed waves, the pounding rhythm of the ocean both comforted and unsettled him. He had committed to understanding those ancient giants, whose instincts for survival mirrored the struggles of his community. Yet, every time he spoke to the fishermen's strong, weathered hands gripping fishing rods, he sensed the tension. It bubbled beneath their surface, a fear that clashed with Jake's visions for sustainable practices and ecological preservation. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The tempest that barreled toward Sea-Watch altered everything. Waters churned angrily, the storm arrived with such ferocity that families scrambled to safety while fishing boats found themselves crushed against the rocky shore. The next morning, glancing up and down the harbor littered with splintered wood and torn nets, Jake felt the weight of shattered dreams settle heavily over his heart. He watched as his neighbors struggled through the wreckage, their faces etched with despair. Hope was smothered under waves of uncertainty, but deep down, he recalled the ancient predators, creatures that had weathered their own storms and evolved. With that spark in mind, Jake found himself standing before a crowd that filled the community center. The air crackled with pulse-quickening tension as the townsfolk wrestled with the uncertain future. Visions of rebuilding collided with long-held beliefs. Would they embrace a vision that embraced their heritage and taught resilience? Then the voice of an elder fisherman cut through the murmur of worry. He was a mentor to Jake, once a guiding light, now questioning if the past could truly guide them to face an unknown future. The silence that enveloped the room narrowed Jake's throat like a tight vice. Every eye locked onto him, minds wrestling with hope and doubt. Pushing back the churn of panic in his chest, Jake prepared to answer. With the future of Sea-Watch hanging in the balance, could he turn skepticism into unity? Or would division tear apart the only home he had ever known? Jake's heart raced. The weight of every expectation felt like the tide pressing against him, yet he stood firm. Taking a deep breath, he let the air fill his lungs, allowing the salty freshness to ground him. The faces around him blurred as he focused inward, recalling the excitement that had driven him to study the ocean's forgotten giants in the first place. Let us not forget, he began, his voice cracking but steady, that change, no matter how daunting, isn't always a threat. Sometimes, it's a beacon of hope, like the sunlight breaking through the darkest of storms. He glanced toward the elder fisherman, who stared back with a furrowed brow but perhaps a glimmer of curiosity. The crowd shifted, murmurs rising and falling like ocean waves, but Jake pressed on. The Cretaceous period was a time of immense change. It was a battleground of adaptation and survival. Every creature, every predator was forced to evolve or perish. We can learn so much from that. He paused, letting his words hang in the air, watching for reactions. Jake's pulse quickened when a few nods emerged from familiar faces in the audience. He forged ahead. If we want our stories to endure, we cannot cling to the past blindly. We must adapt. Embrace the practices that will keep our community thriving. But those predators are long gone. Someone shouted from the back, the voice thick with disbelief. We can't just change everything because of history. What does that even look like for us? A curtain of silence fell, and Jake felt the challenge linger. He had expected this, of course. Change was an unwelcome guest for many. But in that silence, a flicker of determination ignited within him. What we do today will lay the groundwork for generations. Fishermen of the Cretaceous learned to navigate their challenges. With our technology, our knowledge, all of you can do the same. Together, we can enact sustainable practices that honor our past while ensuring a future. This time, a ripple of murmurs ignited in the room. A woman next to the elder spoke, a tremor in her voice tinted with hope. What if we incorporated teachings from marine biology into our fishing methods? What if we use new techniques that could rejuvenate our waters? Jake's heart soared. Exactly. We can reinvigorate our fisheries. Imagine schools of fish returning, thriving, and abundant. It's not just possible, it's within our reach. The atmosphere shifted. Jake felt the walls of skepticism slowly start to dissolve. He could see the sparks of possibility lighting up faces throughout the community. Someone else raised their hand, asking questions about specific practices, and each new inquiry felt like a thread connecting their past and future. But then a low rumble echoed from outside. A reminder of the storm, the reminder of everything they had lost. The elderly fisherman stood, swaying slightly, taking on the role of the elder in the moment. Change, boy, is terrifying. But in his words is truth. We've always adapted. What are our next steps? Jake nodded, his hands trembling slightly as he faced the crowd. Together, we can draft a plan to explore these new opportunities. Let us form a committee, gather ideas, make this our collective dream. The energy in the room buzzed with excitement. They were ready to rebuild, both physical structures and spirits. Yet, as he walked home that evening, shadows danced back in his mind. He felt the strange sensation of hope infused with unvoiced fears. Would they actually dare to trust him? A new thought nudged at him, a question he wished to explore. As darkness closed in, he wondered, would tradition evolve into something more beautiful than ever imagined? Or would it ultimately falter against the waves of change? In the quiet of his room, Jake felt the pulse of uncertainty beating through him, compelling him to seek answers that might just determine the fate of Sea-Watch. The moment to confront the past was upon him, a moment of reckoning waiting to unfold. The morning light spilled into Jake's room, illuminating the chaos of papers and charts strewn across his desk. His ideas from the night before swirled around him like eddies in water. He needed clarity, a structure to transform his vision into reality. He ventured out with a fresh coffee in hand, making his way to the boat dock. A slight chill hung in the air, but the rising sun gave way to the anticipation of a new day. As he approached the dock, he spotted some of the fishermen he'd addressed the night before, gathered in small clusters, talking animatedly amongst themselves. Jake's heart warmed at their energy. They were willing to consider change after all. I've been thinking, Jake interrupted, trying to keep his tone light despite the weight of his mission. What if we meet later this week? Start brainstorming together. Sounds good, replied Clara, the woman who had spoken up during his talk. Her eyes gleamed with determination, reflecting hope that sparked deep within Jake. As plans began to take shape, the air around them crackled with possibility. They agreed to gather in a community center that Friday. Jake was surprised at how quickly the fishermen rallied behind him, drawing in more and more faces eager to engage. Still, deep inside, doubts lingered. Could he really drive a movement, or was this merely a fleeting spark ignited by the excitement of promise? Friday arrived at last. The room buzzed with chatter, the community filled to near capacity. Jake's nerves transformed into resolve as he stood in front of the crowd, their hopeful faces ready to hear him. Think of tomorrow, he began, and silence enveloped them. Not just for you, but for every child here, for every future fisherman. What we do today will change our tomorrow. Our ocean's life and our lives depend on the commitments we're willing to make. His voice was steady as he outlined ideas for sustainable fishing practices, based on scientific research blended with traditional knowledge. Suddenly, a hand shot up from the back. It was the elder fisherman, his expression stern yet curious. "What happens if things go wrong, boy? What if we lose it all?" Jake paused, feeling the weight of the question. "Change always comes with risk," he conceded. "But staying stagnant carries just as much danger. Together, we can minimize those risks. We can educate ourselves about what works and what doesn't. The ocean is resilient, if we permit it the space to heal." The room filled with murmurs, the fishermen exchanging glances. Jake could tell this wasn't just talk anymore. They were beginning to believe. He could see it in their faces, the shifting emotions, bewilderment mixing with nascent hope. By the end of the evening, they agreed to implement a pilot program, testing out new techniques on a small scale. They would record their results, sharing knowledge and adjusting together. A wave of excitement rose, each man clapping Jake on the back, encouraging him as if he had already made a mark on their lives. As he walked home, a smile crept onto Jake's face. He felt lighter, buoyed by their collective intent to embrace the unknown. Just when he thought he'd found a rhythm in the unfolding change, a deep rumble echoed once more from the horizon, a reminder that nothing was guaranteed, and in that moment, uncertainty crashed back in. Would they hold strong in the face of adversity? Would progress prevail against the force of nature, and more importantly, the force of human doubt? As night descended, Jake's heart pounded with a blend of hope and apprehension, knowing tomorrow would demand even more from him. He wouldn't just be leading a movement, he would be risking everything he was for the chance to reshape their destiny. The stakes had grown higher, and with them, the weight of possibility unfurled its enormous canvas. But would it be enough to steer the tides of change in their favor? The sun rose the next morning, spilling golden light over Jake once more, but he felt the weight of the day ahead pressing in on him. Ideas had breathed life over the community, but apprehension lingered. He needed that excitement to carry through. Today, they'd hold their first meeting to discuss sustainable practices, but he wondered, would the enthusiasm last? He downed a quick breakfast and set out for the community center. The walk felt longer than usual, his thoughts tangled in what-ifs. Would the fishermen show up? And if they did, would they be as committed as they were the night before? His heart raced with uncertainty, and doubts surfaced like flotsam on a tide. As he arrived, he exhaled deeply, trying to calm the whirlwind inside. The doors were open, and inside, a small group began to gather. Clara waved him over, her smile bright in the morning light. "We're excited, Jake. Can't wait to hear what you have in mind." Jake nodded, fueled by her optimism. He entered the room, trying to soak in the palpable energy hanging in the air. Each person carried a mix of hope and skepticism, and he could sense that emotional balance shifting. "All right, everyone." Jake started, his voice steady, but the nerves told a different story. "Thank you for coming together today. We stand at the brink of something important. Let's talk about how to make real our plans for sustainability." His words set off a spark. Ideas flowed, and he watched as fishermen discussed techniques they'd never considered before. They dove into everything from using different nets to understanding breeding seasons. Engaged conversations filled the room, laughter punctuating serious discussions. It felt electric. But just as excitement peaked, an old-timer named Gus raised a hand, his brow furrowed. "But what if we try this and it doesn't work? We depend on the ocean. If we fail?" Disappointment hung in the air like damp fog. Jake took a deep breath, mirroring the determination he saw in others' eyes. "That's a valid concern, Gus. Change can be daunting. But remember the evidence we gathered together? The fish stocks are declining. This is our chance to take ownership of our fate." Gus nodded slowly, but Jake could still see the worry etched in his features. The room quieted momentarily as they absorbed the gravity of his words, but hope flickered in every bright eye. "Let us also talk about what we can gain," Jake continued, softening his approach. By working together, we can not only save our livelihoods but create lifelong memories for our kids, teaching them to fish in a healthy ocean. At that, the room erupted. Fishermen began to share their own childhood stories, the joy of fishing with their parents and family traditions tied to the sea. Conversations transformed, shifting gears from an air of skepticism to one of camaraderie. Laughter cascaded through the room, overshadowing uncertainty. As the meeting wound down, Jake sensed a shift. They weren't just accepting his ideas, they were truly buying in. The common thread weaving through their discussions emerged the love for the ocean and the desire to protect it for generations to come. When Jake stepped outside, the sun was setting, casting a fiery glow over the community center. A sense of unity settled in his chest, warming his doubts. They might just pull this off. Despite the warmth, a familiar rumble raced in from the sea, that low, ominous sound. The tides shifted outside, and Jake's heart raced again. Was the ocean sending a warning, or was it the heartbeat of the very life they were trying to protect? As he lingered at the entrance, he glanced back at the brightly lit room. They were on the cusp of change. But could they weather the storms ahead? With natural forces and personal doubts threatening their progress, Jake wondered, how far would he go to defend what they were striving for, and would their resolve hold when faced with real challenges? What if today was just the beginning of a battle they didn't see coming? The next morning, the air felt thick with tension. Jake awoke to a sky shrouded in gray, clouds gathering like a foreboding cloak. He took one look outside and felt the weight of yesterday's rise slip away. Instead, doubt had settled in its place. The meeting had sparked hope, but today, that spark seemed dimmed. He forced himself to get dressed, suppressing his lingering fears. After a quick bite, he stepped outside, fraught with the knowledge that today would focus on action, not just words. The fishermen had agreed to gather again, but the second meeting felt different. It felt crucial. The community center appeared stark against the dull sky, the vibrant light from before now muted. Jake took a deep breath and walked in. The familiar faces were there, but he could sense a shift in mood. Discussions floated in the air, but they lacked the buoyancy that had lifted them just a day prior. Clara, ever the upbeat presence, met him at the door. "Hey, Jake. I think everyone realizes today is important," she said, but her eyes betrayed worry. "Yeah," he responded, his own apprehension simmering just below the surface. "Let us hope they feel it enough to act." As he stood before them, Jake felt the weight of their potential action pressing down. He started with a brief recap of the first meeting, an effort to reignite that initial flame of enthusiasm. But as he spoke, he noticed Gus sitting with arms crossed, staring into the distance. "All right, everyone. Today, let's not just brainstorm. We need to form teams and start making actionable plans. We've brainstormed, and now it's time to roll up our sleeves." He could feel a hesitant energy in the room, gathering like storm clouds. "Team leader for what exactly?" Gus's voice cut through, the skepticism sharp. "We can talk all day, but when it comes to getting in the water or hauling in the nets, what makes you think any of this will stick?" Jake paused, caught off guard but determined. "You're right, Gus. Action is what will create change, but first, we need a plan." He took a step closer, realizing this was a pivotal moment. This isn't just about techniques. This is about trust and teamwork. We're all in the same boat. If you all rise up, we can steer this community toward a sustainable future. Slow murmurs ensued, the men and women looking at one another as the weight of their situation sank in. Gus' eyes softened a fraction, but he still seemed reluctant. "I just worry that we're putting too much hope in something untested. What if we try it and it goes sideways? And what if we don't try it?" Jake countered, voice steady. "What if we just let things continue the way they are? The ocean will be worse off," and he hesitated. "So will we. We have a chance to write a different story and build something better." The flicker of resolve in Clara's eyes cut through the tension. She spoke up, her voice rising with conviction. "We owe it to ourselves and to our kids to at least try. Slowly, nods spread across the room like a ripple in water, and Jake could feel the atmosphere changing. They started to break into small groups, the sound of low chatter growing again, each team bouncing ideas off one another. Jake felt the tiniest smile tug at his lips, but then, someone rushed in, breathless and panicked. "You all need to come quick. Something's happening down by the shore." The urgency in their voice drew immediate attention, the mood shifting from uncertainty to alarm. Jake's heart sank, a tight ball of dread settling in his stomach. "What happened?" he asked, pushing past the assemblage. As they raced towards the door, Jake's mind reeled. What could be happening at the shore? Was it related to their plans? Was the ocean itself warning them about their ambitions? His heartbeat quickened as an unsettling sense of fear crept in. What awaited them down by the waves? Were they about to witness something that could shatter their newfound resolve? Would they stand strong against whatever storm lay ahead? As they spilled out of the community center, Jake pushed through the crowd, adrenaline rushing through him. The weight of the sky mirrored the tension in his chest. People murmured around him, their voices rising in panic. What could it be? He wondered, urgency fueling each step. When they reached the shore, the salty sea air hit him like a slap, refreshing yet foreboding. He noticed a huddle of fishermen's wives near the rocks, their faces pale with fear. Clara dashed up beside him, her eyes scanning the scene. "Jake, what are they looking at?" As Jake approached the group, a shout echoed from the water. "Get back! Everyone, step away!" A figure waved his arms, urgency cutting through the murmurs like a knife. It was Tom, an elderly fisherman known for his wisdom but also for his tendency to exaggerate. "What is going on?" Jake shouted, straining to see through the cluster of eager bodies. "Something's in the water." Tom's voice trembled slightly, hinting at both fear and fascination. "It's huge. I've never seen anything like it." Jake's heart thumped harder, anxiety mixing with curiosity. Was it a whale? Or something worse? The ocean had always been a tapestry of mystery, but this? It felt like it was gnawing at their resolve, like the waves wanted to pull everything under. "Let us move closer," Clara urged, determination in her tone despite the fear. They weaved through the crowd, edging closer to the water's edge, where foam rolled onto the sand, flickering in the gray light. As they reached the front, the sights ahead were surreal. Just offshore, a massive shape, sleek and dark, glided beneath the surface. It darted back and forth, almost playful, but its sheer size was terrifying. "What in the world?" Jake breathed, unable to tear his gaze away. "It looks like a prehistoric predator," Clara whispered, gripping Jake's arm tightly. "What if it's dangerous?" Jake could barely respond. For a moment, everything faded except for that creature. The waves danced around it, shimmering with uncertainty, just like their plans for the future. Suddenly, the creature breached the surface, a fin sharp and imposing slicing through the water, sending sprays of sea foam skyward. Gasps filled the air, blending with the murmur of the ocean. Everyone stepped back. Tom shouted again, but the crowd froze, entranced. The atmosphere was electric, filled with a mix of horror and awe. This was more than an animal, it was a symbol of the primal struggle between man and nature, the unforgiving reality they were trying to fight against. But then, just as suddenly as it had appeared, the creature crashed back into the depths, leaving ripples that spanned wide. The tension broke, the crowd erupting into anxious chatter. Jake could see fear creeping back into their faces, mingled with wonder. What did it mean? Was this creature a sign of nature's anger or a challenge to be embraced? Tom looked at Jake, desperation in his eyes. "We can't let this scare us. We need to act now, while we still have the chance." Jake felt the weight of responsibility press down. This was more than just about fishing rules or sustainable practices. This was about facing the uncertain, about standing tall in the face of fear. "Let us gather our thoughts," Jake called, his voice firm cutting through the noise. "We need a plan, a real plan. We have to work together more than ever." But did they even understand what was at stake? Was it too late to rewrite the story of their community? A chill ran through him, and the shadows of doubt loomed again. With uncertainty swirling around him, Jake pressed onward. The moment had arrived for action, but could they rally beyond their fears in the face of such mystery? As the crowd began to disperse, Jake felt a strange sense of purpose bubbling below the surface. What could they do next, when even the ocean seemed to be in revolt? Would they rise to meet this challenge or be swept away? Jake gathered a small group around him, the flicker of determination in their eyes mixing with dread. Clara stood close, her brow furrowed in thought, while a couple of other fishermen leaned in, eager to hear what he had to say. "First, we need to know what we're dealing with," Jake said, crossing his arms. "That thing in the water could be a warning, or it might just be lost. Either way, we can't panic." Tom nodded, his weathered face serious. "We have to remember the ocean isn't ours to control. It gives and it takes. We've worked it hard for years. But it seems like it's telling us something now." The air was thick with tension. Jake could feel it wrap around him like brackish water. Fishermen whispered among themselves, their faces a mix of fear and curiosity. Even the wind felt hesitant, waiting for someone to make a stand. "I think we should try to document it," Clara suggested, her eyes sparkling with an idea. "Maybe we can gather more information. The more we know, the better decisions we can make." Jake felt a spark of hope. "You're right. We can get boats, head out there, take pictures, maybe even contact a researcher or two. If we present the facts, maybe we can convince people it's not all doom and gloom." Excitement pulsed through the group, though uncertainty still lingered. Several nodded, their jaws set with newfound strength, while others seemed hesitant. Jake began to sense the growing divide, those willing to confront the unknown and those paralyzed by it. "One of us has to go to the mainland," Tom pointed out. "We need experts. This is bigger than we are now. We can't fight something we don't fully understand." A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd. Jake's heart raced. "I'll do it," he said quickly, surprising even himself. His mind raced with thoughts of what they might uncover. "I'll head for resources and support. We need help." "That's dangerous," Clara warned, her voice dropping. "You don't know what might be out there or if the creature comes back." "I know," Jake said, feeling the weight of her concern. "But we can't sit idle. If we let fear dictate our actions, we'll lose everything. Our community, our home. It's worth the risk." A flicker of understanding sparked between them, and Clara's worried expression softened. "I'll go with you then." "Absolutely not," Tom interjected firmly. "You'll stay here. We need you leading the charge for the rest of the community. Rally the fishermen. Make sure they're ready for anything when Jake returns." The tension was thick as Clara and Tom exchanged glances, both knowing the risks involved. Jake felt a lump in his throat, the weight of their expectation heavy on him. "I promise I'll come back," he said, trying to reassure them both. They wasted no time preparing. Jake's heart raced as he secured supplies, a compass, food, even old maps of the region. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting an amber glow over the shore, giving him a fleeting sense of courage. Before he knew it, he and a couple of other fishermen were wading into the small boat, the engine sputtering to life beneath him. As they pulled away from the dock, he glanced back at the shoreline. Clara stood at the edge, watching intently, her eyes reflecting the fire of determination he hoped to embody. As they ventured further out into the ocean, the twilight deepening overhead, the enormity of their mission hit Jake. The waves swelled, and the air felt charged, as if it knew of the unseen predator lurking just beneath the surface. What awaited him on the open water? What truths would he uncover about the creature that could change everything? Jake tightened his grip on the wheel, filling his lungs with salt air. But one thing was certain, whatever they found, the confrontation would test more than just courage. It would test the very fabric of their community. And as dark clouds loomed on the horizon, he wondered, was he truly ready for what lay beneath the waves? The further they drifted from shore, the more the heaviness in Jake's chest grew. He scanned the horizon, where the deepening hues of blue blended into gray. It felt as though the ocean itself was watching him, waiting with anticipation. The boat bobbed gently over the rising and falling swells, each movement echoing the uncertainty churning within him. "Keep an eye out," Jake instructed the two fishermen with him, Mark and Luis. They nodded, eyes wide and alert, casting worried glances toward the murky depths beneath them. "What if we don't find anything?" Mark asked, peering into the water like a child gazing into a dark theater, unsure of what might leap out. "Then we reevaluate," Jake replied, forcing a brave smile. "But if we do find something, we'll know how to move forward." The words felt strong, yet his heart pulsed doubtingly. Minutes passed slowly. The silence loomed heavily over the water, punctuated only by the sound of waves slapping against the hull. Jake's mind spiraled with questions: what sort of creature could make such waves? Images of the monstrous figure danced in his head, and for the first time, he wondered whether they were pursuing knowledge or courting danger. Then, just as hope started to dim, something shifted in the water, a ripple, almost imperceptible at first, but growing. "Did you see that?" Luis exclaimed, gripping the side of the boat, eyes wide with apprehension. Jake's heart leapt into his throat. "Prepare the camera," he shouted, adrenaline pumping through his veins. They had brought along a small waterproof camera, and he was suddenly grateful they depacked it. As they leaned over the edge to catch a better look, the water around them darkened ominously, the calm surface shattered by increasing waves. Something was indeed lurking beneath, moving closer. "What do we do?" Mark's voice trembled as they all peered down, instinctively backing away. "Just hold steady," Jake shouted, staring down into the abyss. The shadows shifted again, this time more violently, and the air seemed to tremble with anticipation. Suddenly, the water erupted, and the creature surfaced glistening, sleek, and larger than they had imagined. It had scales that reflected the dim light above, casting a kaleidoscope of colors, but its size was daunting, whispering of a power they couldn't fully comprehend. "Can you get a picture?" Jake urged as he readied himself to capture this moment. But as the creature eyed them, a deep rumble echoed from beneath the ocean, sending pulses of fear through Jake. The creature began to circle them, and they could see the sharp contours of its body cutting through the waves. The air shifted, electrified and thick, making it hard to breathe. "It's not here to play, is it?" Luis quipped, forcing a laugh that felt lost in the tension. Jake clenched his jaw, eyes never leaving the beast. "Let us try to keep our distance and document its behavior." He felt a surge of resolve. They needed to understand what they were up against, but being this close he felt fear curling around him like seaweed. "What if it charges?" Mark asked, dread creeping into his voice. "Then we get the hell out of here." Jake shot back, determination igniting in him. But the creature didn't charge. Instead, it paused, regarding them with a curious, almost intelligent gaze. In that moment, Jake felt an unexpected connection, a bridge formed between fear and understanding. "Take the picture," he shouted, urgency clawing at him. In a flurry of movement, Luis aimed the camera toward the beast. Click. The flash went off, illuminating its colossal form against the deepening twilight. Then, unexpectedly, the creature dove beneath them, disappearing into the depths. The sudden silence that followed felt unsettling, like the world had exhaled. "What just happened?" Mark gasped, the weight of the moment crashing down. "I think we just opened a door to something vast," Jake replied, heart racing. But before they could process what they had seen, another tremor shook the water. Something even larger was approaching, forcing them to confront the reality of their quest. "Brace yourselves," Jake shouted, eyes wide as the surface erupted once again, and the reality of their journey twisted in a way he hadn't anticipated. At that moment, he knew they had awakened something primal beneath the waves. Would it truly be a warning, or something much more significant coming to the surface? The ocean trembled beneath them, surfacing with a fury that made Jake's heart race like a drum echoing in a canyon. He breathed sharp, shallow gasps, instinct pushing him to grab hold of the boat's edge. Mark and Luis mirrored his panic, eyes darting around as that electric fear charged the air. "Stay calm," Jake urged, but even he could hear the uncertainty lacing his words. Then the water broke, splitting like an unholy promise. A massive shadow rose, dwarfing even the creature that had just vanished. The crew gasped as what appeared to be a monstrous dorsal fin sliced through the surface along with gleaming scales that glinted with unknown hues. "What the hell is that?" Mark shouted, disbelief etching lines on his forehead. "I don't know, but we need to," Jake began, but the creature erupted fully into view, thrashing and spraying seawater everywhere, sending salty droplets flying into their eyes. The beast was a living nightmare, with jagged teeth and a body that twisted with primal elegance. Its head towered, surveying the boat with an intelligence that was breathtaking and terrifying all at once. Luis fumbled with the camera, barely able to steady his hands as the theme of dread took over. "Jake! I don't think we should provoke it." Jake shook his head, resolve hardening within him. "No, we have to document this. We have to know what we're dealing with." He grabbed the camera from Luis, but his finger hung poised over the shutter. The creature was captivating, yet he sensed the danger it represented. Would this be their chance or a doorway they would never return from? Yet the creature seemed to sense their hesitation. It dipped and swayed, testing their resolve. The waves it created slapped against the hull, each crash a reminder of its power, but still, it lingered. Then, seemingly in a surreal act of communication, it lunged closer, submerging just below the surface, its eyes fixed on Jake. A strange calm washed over him. Maybe it was his mind playing tricks, but the creature appeared curious, interested even. Was it looking for something? Or was it, too, trying to understand them? Okay, Jake whispered, lowering the camera slightly. Then he realized he had stopped breathing. He had to capture this moment. This wasn't just about them, it was about everything standing on the edge of discovery. "Get ready," he commanded. He clicked the camera as it surged closer, the flash illuminating its features against the deepening darkness of the sea. He couldn't help but admire the intricate patterns etched into its scales, reminiscent of art that spanned centuries. But just as quickly, the moment slipped back into chaos. With a powerful whip of its tail, the creature surged away, creating a whirlpool of turbulence that rocked the boat. Water splashed over the sides, drenching them in cold seawater. "Hold on!" Jake shouted, fighting to stay upright as the vessel dipped dangerously low. As the creature vanished into the depths, their adrenaline exploded into the air. "What was that?" Mark yelled, the realization crashing down as quickly as the waves had. "I don't know," Jake breathed, heart pounding wildly. They had stumbled into something more than they could handle, a world beneath the waves teeming with life that had existed long before them. Then, before they could even begin to comprehend their encounter, two smaller shapes broke through the surface, darting around them in a flurry. They were smaller yet equally mesmerizing, their darting movements like flashes of lightning in the night. "Should we go?" Luis asked, glancing toward the horizon as uncertainty settled in. Jake looked out at the dancing shadows that hinted at more lurking beneath. Something was clearly going on here, a story unfolding right before their eyes. "We can't turn back now," he insisted, steeling himself. "This is just the beginning." And as the moon climbed higher, illuminating the water, Jake knew they were in waters that promised discovery and peril alike. What lay ahead was uncertain, but he felt an unyielding call tugging at him from the depths, beckoning him into the unknown. "Let us see where this takes us," he whispered, adrenaline mixing with excitement. But the question buzzed relentlessly in his mind: would they tame the chaos, or would the ocean swallow them whole before the truth could rise to the surface? The sun began to rise over the horizon, painting the sky with hues of peach and lavender, as Jake and his crew continued their expedition into the unknown depths of the ocean. The bone-chilling water washed over the boat, but excitement thrummed in his veins, igniting a fire within him. They had seen wonders that day, but uncertainty loomed like a shadow behind them. How would they communicate this revelation to the community of Sea-Watch? "Jake, this is incredible!" Mark shouted, his voice almost drowned out by the steady crash of waves. "But we need to remain focused. Let us start steering back toward shore. We can process all of this together." Jake nodded, his heart racing. "We have to ensure we document everything we saw. This could be the key to uniting our community with scientific understanding and respect for the ocean." As they turned the boat, the creature seemed to linger just beneath the surface, an enigmatic reminder of nature's mysteries. They had come face to face with a predator of the deep, and Jake felt a kinship with it. They, too, were warriors against the tides, navigating their own uncertainties. "Why don't we set up a small recording?" Clara suggested, her energy unwavering. "Let us get as much footage as possible before we return." They gathered around the camera, their faces illuminated by the low light of the dawn. Each one, from the quiet Louise to the spirited Clara, shared their feelings about the encounter. They voiced their hopes and fears, realizing every word echoed through the crew. "Today, we witnessed a part of the ocean's legacy," Jake said, looking into the camera. "Not just for us but for our children and their children. We need to tread lightly and embrace both science and tradition. The ocean has given us so many gifts. It's time we start giving back." As they headed back, the shore soon came into view, the familiar outline of Sea-Watch beckoning in the distance. Jake's heart swelled with hope, realizing that what lay ahead could redefine his community's relationship with the ocean forever. Back on the dock, the fishermen had gathered, anxiously awaiting their return. Clara stepped off the boat first, her eyes wide with excitement, as if they had just unearthed buried treasure. "We saw things no one could ever dream of. You need to hear this." Tom pushed through the crowd, his weathered face full of expectation. "Well, tell us everything." Jake took a deep breath, gathering himself. "We faced something magnificent out there, a creature that reminded us of our urgent need to adapt and evolve. Instead of fearing the unknown, it's time to embrace it." As he unveiled the footage of the creature, a ripple of disbelief and awe washed over the crowd. The shimmering scales, the grace with which it moved, captured their hearts. Each passing moment felt like a pivotal connection to the ancient instincts of survival that had been lost to time. "Together," Jake continued, "we can protect this coastal legacy. Sustainable practices, education, resilience. This doesn't need to be a battle against the ocean. It can be a partnership." The crowd's response surged with renewed adrenaline, excitement rippling among them. "What do we do next?" Clara's voice rang out, embodying everyone's yearning for action. Jake's heart surged with a bright vibrancy. "Let us establish a community council, gather our best ideas. We need to unite our knowledge of fishing with the marine biology we learned. Together, we can create a sustainable plan and invite experts to guide us." That day laid the groundwork for a new chapter in Sea-Watch. Fishermen's voices filled the air, mingling with the sound of waves licking at the shore. They found common ground, tying their histories together, shaping their future from fragments of the past. The fear that had once clouded Jake's heart shifted. They embraced the uncertainty of the ocean. It was a call to unity, urging them to adapt and survive not just as individuals but as a community intertwined with the rhythm of the sea. In the days that followed, the town rallied, driven not by fear but a collective determination born from the discovery of their marine wonders. New fishing practices emerged, and they began to see real changes in the water, a promise reborn, schools of fish returning to the shores. As Jake watched the tides lap lovingly at the sandy beach, a tear of joy slipped down his cheek. The storm had shaped them, but it had also brought forth something beautiful, a thriving future sculpted by adaptability, respect, and the love of their ocean home. The sun dipped low, casting a golden glow across Sea-Watch, and the laughter of families blended with the whispers of the water. Jake felt the pulse of success thrum in his chest, knowing they were united. They would face whatever came next together. This was their beginning, a purpose rekindled, a battle with nature turned into a dance of coexistence brought forth from the depths you need to subscribe now to our channel to not miss the next exclusive stories that inspire transformation. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Your support makes a difference. Comment your reactions and feelings about this ending, we want to hear from you. And don't wait not even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. True fans understand the importance of lifting each other up. Let us keep this momentum going.